Something very unusual happened in Homa Bay on Sunday. A political movement announced a rally. The organizers notified the police. The police promised security. Then the convoy arrived, and suddenly, roads were blocked. Crowds appeared. Tires were burned. Tear gas was fired. Weapons were recovered. The convoy was forced onto alternative routes, and eventually, vehicles carrying the political leaders came under attack. And this is where the story gets even more serious, because there is evidence of vehicles being hit by live ammunition. There are images showing bullets penetration. There are photographs of damaged vehicles. There are leaders who say they were being tracked. There were attempts to locate some of the leaders before the rally. And there was a remarkable period when almost nobody seemed to know exactly where Linda Mwananchi was moving. So the question is not simply what happened in Homa Bay. The bigger question is, who knew what was happening before it happened? And that is where our story begins. On August 12, James Orengo raised the alarm. He warned that there were plans to disrupt the Linda Mwananchi rally in Homa Bay. There were claims that groups were being mobilized. There were allegations that weapons were being prepared. And they were concerned that the political rally could turn violent. 4 days later, those fears became reality. Now look at the sequence. The rally was not a surprise. The organizers had formally notified the police. The police acknowledged receiving the notification, and the Homa Bay police commander assured the organizers that security would be provided. So by Sunday morning, the security agencies knew that Linda Mwananchi was coming. They knew where the rally was supposed to happen. They knew where it was supposed to happen. And they knew there were already concerns about possible violence. Then the convoy started moving, and the roads started closing. At different points, the movement encountered resistance. Roads were blocked. Tires were burned. Groups gathered along the routes. Police intervened. Tear gas was used. And the convoy was forced to navigate around the obstacles. Now, this is where things become interesting, because one road being blocked can be spontaneous. 2 roads being blocked can still be coincidence. But when a political convoy is moving through a country and repeatedly encounters obstacles along different points of its journey, the obvious question becomes, who knew the convoy was coming? And more importantly, who knew which road it was taking? Because the convoy did something very important. It changed routes. Instead of following the major roads, it started using alternative routes. Dusty roads, smaller roads, roads that were clearly not part of the glamorous political itinerary. And that created an unexpected political moment. The people who had been promised shiny development were now watching a convoy of politicians bouncing through clouds of dust. Kenya's politics had produced a new campaign slogan, development, but make sure you carry a face mask. But beneath the humor was something much more serious. The alternative routes were supposed to make the convoy harder to stop. Yet, according to Karoli Omondi, they did not solve the problem, because Omondi said the movement had been tracked. And this is one of the most important claims in the entire Homa Bay story. He did not merely say the people were watching them. He said trackers had been installed and were being used to know where the movement was. Now, let's understand what that actually means. A modern tracking system can work in several ways. A phone can communicate with mobile networks. A smartphone can determine its location through satellite navigation and other location systems. A dedicated tracking device can be installed inside a vehicle. That device can determine whether the vehicle is and transmits its location through a communications network. The person moving the system can then see the vehicle's movement. The vehicle turns, the location changes. The vehicle takes another road, the location changes again. In other words, changing the route does not defeat tracking if the source of the tracking remains active. And that is why the allegation made by Karoli Omondi is so significant. Because Linda Mwananchi was not simply being followed along one road. According to him, the movement was being tracked even as it changed directions. So now the question becomes, what exactly was tracking them? Was it a vehicle? Was it a phone? Was it several phones? Was it a dedicated tracking device? Was somebody physically following them? Or was information about their movement being passed from one person to another along the route? And this is where technology meets politics, because if a political convoy is being electronically tracked, then somebody has access to the information and somebody knows how to use it. That is not the same thing as seeing a convoy on the road. That is intelligence. Now, let's go back to Saturday night, because the tracking allegation makes another part of the story much more interesting. Where were the Linda Mwananchi leaders? James Orengo whereabouts in Kisumu were known, but there was much less clarity about where some of the other senior leaders were spending the night. And then came the allegation involving Homa Bay Tourist Hotel. People reportedly went there looking for Edwin Sifuna, but Sifuna was not there. Think about that for a moment. Somebody apparently expected to find him there. He wasn't there. So, how did the location enter the equation? Was it a hotel booking? Was information leaked? Was someone inside the movement communicating with outsiders? Was somebody physically following the leaders? Or was electronic information being used? And if the movement really had reason to believe its location was compromised, then another development suddenly makes sense. For a period, information about the movement's location almost disappeared. Sifuna's location wasn't clear. Babu Owino's location wasn't clear. Orengo's movements were not being broadcast in the usual way. The convoy's next destination wasn't obvious. There was almost an information blackout, and in politics, information is power. If your opponent knows exactly where you are, he knows where to put the roadblocks. If he knows where you are going, he knows where to wait. If he knows where you are staying, he knows where to look. And if he knows which road you have switched to, then your alternative route is no longer an alternative. It is simply another destination. And eventually, the convoy reached the confrontation. This is where we have to stop talking about stones and start talking about bullets, because images from the incident showed serious damage to vehicles associated with the Linda Mwananchi convoy. Citizen and other media reports showed bullet damage. Amakovewala, who was physically present, also showed damage to her vehicle and pointed to two apparent bullets penetration through the rear passenger area window. That means the story had moved into another category entirely. This was no longer just political heckling, no longer just stone throwing, no longer just roadblocks. There were firearms, there was ammunition, and bullets struck vehicles carrying political leaders. Now, think about what that means. A person carrying a panga can cause serious injury. A person carrying a stone can break a window. But a person carrying a firearm has crossed another line. Because when a firearm is discharged at a political convoy, somebody could die within seconds. So where did those guns come from? Who had them? Who supplied the ammunition? Who were the shooters? Were they acting individually? Or were they part of a coordinated group? And if they were coordinated, who was coordinating them? This is where the word goons becomes inadequate, because goons tell us almost nothing. It doesn't tell us who recruited them. It doesn't tell us who transported them. It doesn't tell us who paid them. It doesn't tell us who gave them information. And it certainly doesn't tell us who gave them instructions. That is why the real investigation has to move beyond the people caught on camera. We need to know the network, because political violence rarely organizes itself. People have to mobilize, people have to communicate, people have to know where to go, and somebody has to know why they are going there. Now, consider the sequence again. The rally was announced, security was notified, warnings were issued, roads were blocked, the convoy changed routes, the convoy was allegedly tracked, the movement eventually came under attack, and live ammunition was involved. That is a remarkable chain of events. And then there is question of the attack itself. Some people have focused on the fact that the convoy was attacked from behind. Does that automatically prove military training? No. But it does raise a much more useful question. Was the attack coordinated? Because when you combine the direction of the attack with the roadblocks, the changing routes, and the alleged knowledge of the convoy's movement, the issue is no longer simply who threw that or who threw what. The issue becomes whether somebody understood where the convoy was going and positioned people accordingly, or what. That is the question investigators need to answer. Then comes the Kisumu question. Gachagua raised the issue of President William Ruto spending Thursday night in Kisumu before leaving on Friday, flying outside the country. Why does that matter? Because Homa Bay was not simply a local village event. It was a political significant rally involving some of the country's most prominent opposition figures. And the security situation around that rally had already become a political issue. So the question naturally arises, was the president briefed about the security situation before the rally? Was information about the threats reaching the highest level of government? And if it did, what was done with that information? This is where Fred Matiang'i's intervention becomes important. Matiang'i was not an outsider looking at the Kenyan security system from the streets. He previously served as the Interior Cabinet Secretary. His argument is that the president sits at the center of the country's national security architecture, and that serious security information ultimately moves through that system. And Kenya's constitution structure gives us something concrete here. The National Security Council is chaired by the president. The Interior Cabinet Secretary is part of it. The Director General of the National Intelligence Service is part of it. The Inspector General of Police is part of it. So when somebody says surely the president knew, the question is not completely imaginary. There is an actual security architecture through which information is supposed to move. The real question is, what information existed? What intelligence had been collected? What warnings had been received? Who received them? What action was taken? And did the president receive a briefing? What is the intelligence trail? And if the answer is yes, then another question follows. Why was a convoy carrying senior political leaders allowed to travel into the environment where roadblocks, weapons, and organized attacks were already developing? That is a question the state has to answer. Not Twitter, not Facebook, the state. Then comes another disturbing allegation, that some of the people injured during the confrontation were pursued even after reaching hospital. If confirmed, that will tell us something about the character of the operation, because chasing people away from a rally is one thing. Following injured people to a medical facility is something else entirely. It will suggest that the confrontation did not necessarily end when the rally was disrupted. It will suggest that some people may have continued looking for particular targets. And that will raise an even bigger question. Who were they looking for? But this story is bigger than one Sunday, because Homa Bay follows earlier confrontations involving Linda Mwananchi. The Kisii convoy attack is one example. People were injured. Vincent later died after sustaining injuries in the attack. Suspects were arrested, and now we have Homa Bay. So perhaps we should stop looking at these incidences as isolated explosions. Perhaps we should look at the pattern. A political movement emerges. It becomes increasingly popular. It starts moving around the country. It attracts large crowds. It challenges the political establishment, and suddenly, the movement repeatedly encounters organized resistance. The resistance is becoming more violent, and now firearms have entered the picture. That should worry every Kenyan, not because everyone has to support Linda Mwananchi, not because everyone has to support Sifuna, but because political competition is supposed to be settled by votes, not bullets. And there is where the story becomes bigger than Ruto, bigger than Sifuna, bigger than Orengo, bigger than Babu, bigger than ODM, bigger than Linda Mwananchi. Because if political movements can be attacked simply because they are gaining ground, then every Kenyan political organization eventually becomes vulnerable. Today it is Linda Mwananchi, tomorrow it could be somebody else. So what exactly happened in Homa Bay? Was it spontaneous anger? Was it local political mobilization? Was it organized Buddhism? Was there coordination across several locations? Was the convoy electronically tracked? Who had access to its environment? Who knew where the leaders were staying? Who knew which routes they were taking? Who supplied the weapons? Who fired bullets? Who organized the people blocking the roads? Who gave them information? And above all, who knew? Because there is something very uncomfortable about this entire story. The organizers knew there were a security threat. The police knew a rally was coming. The political leaders were warning about possible violence. And yet, despite all of that, the violence still happened. That is the part we cannot simply brush aside. If the security agencies did not know what was coming, then why didn't they? If they knew there was a threat but failed to stop it, then why? And if somebody inside the system knew exactly what was coming, then the Kenyan public deserves to know what happened to that information. Because the question is no longer merely who attacked Linda Mwananchi. The question is, who knew Linda Mwananchi was coming? Who knew where they were? Who knew where they would sleep? Who knew which roads they would take? Who was tracking them? Who was waiting for them? And who had the power to stop it? Homa Bay has given us photographs. It has given us damaged vehicles. It has given us bullets. It has given us roadblocks. It has given us arrests. It has given us conflicting political narratives. And it has given us one hell of a political misery. But the misery is not whether something happened. Something happened. The misery is how so many pieces seemed to fit together. And when so many pieces fit together, you don't dismiss the puzzle. You start asking, who put the pieces here? Homa Bay was supposed to be a political rally. Instead, it became a test of Kenya's political culture, a test of its security intelligence, a test of its institutions.